Om Shanti. Today's chapter is titled Fire. Time is cyclic, like an endless, repeating loop of a movie film. Each showing of the film lasts 5,000 years. We souls are the actors as well as the audience. The film script itself has four distinct parts or moves from a story of great joy and moves from a story of great joy to one of real sorrow. The world begins as a wonderland, the fulfillment of every dream, castles of gold and diamonds, rivers of milk, a world of gardens and games, and laughter. A royal kingdom, more elevated and noble than Camelot, filled with more delights than Xanadu. A world of pure human beings, innocent of disharmony or any vice. Truly a golden age. The population is quite small, less than 1 million inhabitants at the beginning, and we are sovereign over the entire world. There is no one else. We grow quite old and never experience a day or even a moment of illness or unhappiness of any sort. When it is time to leave our bodies, at the ripe age of 150 years, we receive a vision of our next life and the happiness it contains, and we live in peace for a new adventure. Gradually, the world gets older, the population increases, and a new dynasty takes over from the dynasty of the sun. Replacing Lakshmi and Narayan, Ram and Sita take their places on the throne. After 8 generations and 1,250 years, the Golden Age has come to its peaceful conclusion, and now begins the dynasty of the moon, the Silver Age. The empire has by now grown greatly in size, but it is still united. There are many smaller kingdoms within it, each lesser king offering complete loyalty to the ruling family. There is still happiness and no war, no quarrels, no sickness, no misfortune. But the world is just a little older. The degree of purity is slightly less, and so it passes in a stately dance, one generation following another, until 12 succeeding births have been taken, and another 1250 years have passed by on the cosmic clock. Something untoward happens then. We souls begin to lose our sparkle and our divinity. We begin to be attracted to one another physically. We lose the consciousness that we are immortal souls. We fall into vices. We who are deities fall, and when we do, the earth is violently affected. Earthquakes and floods destroy the kingdoms, washing away all trace of them. People scatter, and it takes them years to begin rebuilding what was lost. And even then, it cannot really be done, for the ability, the knowledge, the purity have all been lost. In this way, we begin to do penance, to find out from deep within ourselves what went wrong and how to set it right. From a deep, unconscious residue within our memory, we recall the one who had created that world of deities. It had been God, the incorporeal Supreme Soul, Shiva, and so we build temples to him, invoking him to return, to help us recreate our paradise once more. But it is too difficult to remember a bodiless spirit, and so we begin as well as build temples to the deities, to Lakshmi and Narayan, then to Ram and Sita, and later to many others. We have forgotten that those deities are but our former selves. The worship in time grows more and more adulterated. This is the Copper Age. Even now, well after the fall, India is still fabulously wealthy, but in comparison to what had been, it has nothing. And now customs begin to harden while foreign armies steal the treasures. India is quickly becoming a backwater. Rituals keep up the memory of the glorious times now past, but nothing new is being created. The sannyasi cult keeps alive the tradition and value of purity, and scriptures keep the people mindful of right rules of living, pure diet, meditation, etc. But the knowledge of God has been lost, and so people continue to gradually decline. It is a time for others to arise and take center stage in the world drama, for during the destruction following the end of the Silver Age, the continents split apart and many tribes began to develop, each with knowledge of a little piece of the puzzle of the world cycle. The continent of North America rose from beneath the oceans and waited for its own Indians to come and settle there. The first great prophet, Abraham, came at this time. He saw the people of India worshipping deities, and he knew that this was wrong, that only God the Father should be worshipped and no other. So he headed west toward the promising land of his own and began what became both the Jewish and Islamic religions. He built a temple to Shiva in Mecca, where Muhammad later worshipped, and he established sovereignty over Canaan, which became the home of the Jews. The deities had been called the Elohim, but now that plural word began to refer to God alone. Egyptian culture also recalled the dynasties of the ancient deities. In fact, they too called themselves the gods of the sun. Their pyramids were representations in stone of a point of light radiating downward from the sky. The city-states of Greece began to appear, and great thinkers there discussed the nature of reality. Yes, there had been deities at one time ruling the earth, they understood. The Greeks began to worship them as well, and they wove many stories about those elevated ones, whom they called the gods of Olympus. The Greek philosophers developed many theories regarding the soul, the cosmos, and God. Some were remarkably accurate, some far off the mark. The value of purity was still recognized, though by the time of Plato it was already conceded that only a rare and wise person would attain that state. The power of the souls declined steadily. The Greeks fell and Romans took their place. The Hebrews had produced many great prophets and a short-lived kingdom of significant spiritual power. But decline set in there as well, and wars increased. Their religion began to harden into legalism. Another prophet, Christ, descended. He galvanized many into a new manifestation of spirituality. In time, this religion took hold of the failing Roman Empire and eventually the domination of all of Europe. The religion mistook a bodily being for God, just as the people of India had mistaken the deities for their spiritual father. But the Christians had other knowledge which was quite accurate, notably that concerning the coming of a day of judgment and about the kingdom of heaven to follow. They waited for Christ to come again. They did not realize that the part of the Son of God was over, but the part of God Himself was yet to come. In time, peoples of the world had all received their prophets. Population began to increase dramatically, as did wars and other vicious actions. Under the guise of religion, people forced each other to submit to domination. Whole nations were looted and pillaged, and the inhabitants forcibly converted. So began the Iron Age. There were seemingly auspicious moments, such as the Renaissance in Europe, where art and science began to flourish, as well as the exploration of the world. But the intention was profit, and as greed expanded, so did arrogance and anger. Atrocities committed upon conquered people became ever more commonplace. Science began its triumphant movement. The knowledge of the soul was lost almost entirely, but now the knowledge of the physical world expanded to enable tremendous growth of empires. Firearms and other weaponry advanced. Urbanization followed industrialization. Corrupt kings were being replaced by democratic rule, the rule of subjects over subjects. India was conquered first by the Muslims and later by the British. Finally, that ancient land began to wake up. Mahatma Gandhi led the Indians to independence from foreign rule, but not to independence from vices. That task would require the intervention of God. Wars, meantime, became even more widespread and brutal. At the same time, people loudly declared that they were progressing, evolving to some higher level. The truth was that they had been in decline for nearly 2,500 years and were about to burn down the entire earth. Nuclear weapons were developed, and the nations of the world became obsessed with possessing these destructive devices. Evil was coming to a climax in the world, and at the same time, the power of God was making itself felt in a secret way. Who would have believed that he had descended at this terrible time in an out of the way place, teaching people to be pure, and that those teachings would transform the universe? But so it was. Fire. And just as people were in the process of setting the world on fire, so the impure souls of Hyderabad were attempting to burn down the house of God. When they saw that their strategy to harass was not working, violent action was the next step they attempted. They were caught in the grip of anger. Ironically, these people of the anti-Om Mandali party were set upon destroying the only institution finally capable of bringing them happiness. In a world at war, God was teaching the way to peace. But unable to grasp this deeper truth, they attacked. Their plan was to set fire to the building where Brahma Baba's satsang was held. Since they had not succeeded in preventing the women from going there, they would at least burn down the house where they gathered. Yet they were afraid of Brahma Baba too. Deep down they knew it was a divine power which issued from him. So they waited to carry out their plan until a day when Brahma Baba was not present. Then they called together their forces. A great crowd gathered and surrounded Satsang Bhavan. They shouted vulgar expletives and began throwing stones. They broke windows and tore down gates. Moment by moment, the crowd grew more wild until it went completely out of control. More and more people joined the mob, wielding sticks and other weapons. They began to make efforts to get inside the house. But the powerful little mothers, the Shiv Shakti army, stood courageously in the doorways of these groups of 2 or 3 women. And these groups of 2 or 3 women successfully held their posts. Not a single vandal was able to get past them. And the look in these women's eyes was so strong, so terrifying, that the vandals backed away. Instead of rushing in, then they set fire to the house from the outside, hurling torches through windows from all sides. They did not care that in the house were many daughters, wives, mothers, and other relatives of their own families who would burn alive in the conflagration. Their minds were numb with anger. The leaders of the crowd attempted at the last minute to prevent them from going through with the deadly attack, but it was too late. The mob was out of control. Fortunately, one observer rang the police when the torch throwing began, who came quickly and dispersed the crowd, while the fire brigade put out the blaze. Damage had been done physically, but the institution had only been strengthened spiritually. The incident of the fire, as well as other incidents, had been described in the Mahabharata scripture. Through all of these events, Brahma Baba remained free from worry. He was ever the detached observer. We are only the servants of the Father. He will make everything all right. Many tests will come on this path, but if we keep firm faith in Shiv Baba, in the world drama, and in the self, we shall be victorious. The boat of truth may shake, but it does not sink. Inspired by Brahma Baba's example, as well as by the knowledge, the brothers and sisters, even the youngest, were practicing detachment from the world. They were experiencing daily the truth and the practical value of Baba's teachings, and in so doing, they had become far wiser than their years. Om Shanti.